I believe that Assad must go. I believe he will go. But I believe we want to make sure that we have the relationships of friendship with the people that take his place, such that in the years to come, we see Syria as a friend and Syria as a responsible party in the Middle East. This is a critical opportunity for America. And what I'm afraid of is that we've watched over the past year or so, first the president saying, well, we'll let the UN deal with it. And Kofi Annan came in and said, we're going to try to have a ceasefire. That didn't work. Then it looked to the Russians and said, let's see if you can do something. We should be playing the leadership role there, not on the ground with military.
All right.
But play the leadership role.
We are playing the leadership role.
Of Syria, first to Rocky Anderson, Justice Party presidential candidate.
We probably just heard the greatest example of why we need to open up these presidential debates, because the premises under which both of these candidates are operating, the constricted debate does such a disservice to the people of this country. What do we hear? We hear President Obama say we've got to do everything we can to help the opposition, and Mitt Romney saying we ought to be shipping them heavy arms. This is a call for a bloodbath in Syria. Many in the internal opposition in Syria, and I'm not talking about the outsiders, the Muslim Brotherhood and Saudi Arabia and Qatar, who are helping arm them, and even the Salafis who are associated with al-Qaeda going in and helping build bombs for the opposition. Is this really what we want as a country? We have no business doing anything other than working with Russia and helping to bring about a peaceful resolution. And it can be done. There are many in the internal opposition in Syria that want exactly that approach, and they're saying, and I think probably the best thing that's been written about this recently is Jonathan Still's excellent article in the latest Nation magazine. What they want is for the international community to butt out, except for helping bring about a diplomatic, peaceful resolution. And as so many of them say, you're not going to get any democratic advances through more violence in Syria.
Green Party presidential candidate Jill Stein.
Yes, and it's as if there's collective amnesia here, as if we didn't just go through a decade, $5 trillion and thousands of U.S. soldiers whose lives have been sacrificed, and far more civilians whose lives have been lost in an attempted military resolution to these civil and religious strife. And we see that in spite of putting the full force of the United States military and NATO and trillions of dollars in a decade, we have not, with all the power of that force, been able to resolve these conflicts on the ground in Iraq and in Afghanistan. So how in the world, with a far smaller commitment, given the colossal failure of the war effort in Iraq and Afghanistan, how in the world are they thinking that a lesser degree of military intervention is going to solve the problem?
But I don't think that the problem here is that we've failed. I think the problem is that we're trying to assert our will and dictate the result. Can you imagine if there were Muslim countries coming into the United States and occupying us, invading us, telling us how we're to run our government, and then running unmanned drones over Canada, Mexico, the United States, determining who is going to live and who's going to die, and in the process killing hundreds, if not thousands, we don't know how many, innocent men, women, and children? It's an outrage, and our national security is at risk long-term because of the hostility and hatred that we're generating throughout that part of the world. We have got to turn this around, and we, the American people, can do it.
Absolutely. And in fact, this is a failed policy from the get-go. It's not only failed in its impact, it's failed from its very conception. As the human rights head for the United Nations, Navi Pillay, points out, that with arms flowing into both sides in Syria, you have really a catastrophe in the making. We need to stop the flow of the arms. And in fact, the United States and the Obama government, in fact, undermine mind an international treaty that would have begun to slow down the international flow of arms. So the American role here has actually been to throw gasoline on the fires of virtually every ethnic, religious, and national conflict around the Middle East through its militaristic export of arms and the profiteering war industry.
President Obama.